Before the next episode of X Job Downloaded starts, I have a big favour to ask. If you've enjoyed any of our episodes so far, please can you click on the follow button on your platform. I'm on Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon and YouTube. It costs nothing to follow, but makes a real difference to me as a podcast producer. Thank you. So you're an expert in stalking. I mean, and that's because you're talking about a time where the legislation was still fresh.
Yes.
It was groundbreaking because, look, the job that I joined is completely different to the job that you joined.
Yes.
We didn't have a computer in the office. You know, we were handwriting or typing all our reports. We had a typist that would type from our pocketbook. Of course, by the time you've joined, computers are in ascendance. People have mobile phones.
Mm-hmm.
Stalking's become prevalent because it's become so easy.
Yeah.
You know, relationships years ago, when I were a lad, you know, you'd split up with a girlfriend, you'd never see them again. You'd have nothing to do with them. Now, you've got your Facebook and your X and all that sort of stuff. So stalking is more prevalent and pretty difficult to investigate because of the amount of work that's actually coming in continually.
Yeah.
What drew you to that type of investigation?
I don't know, really. I don't know. I just like catching them, if that makes sense. You know, I like catching them in a lie. I like it when the evidence is there, when you're sat in front of them and you've got the evidence there for the interview and they're just lying to you. And I was just drawn to it, I think. I mean, me getting the first stalking protection order was not by choice. It was not by choice, me getting that. The DI came into me. She says, Janet, they're going live on Monday. I went, I know, Mum, I'll put it in on Wednesday because I'm on rest days. She went, Janet, but they're going live on Monday. I went, and I said it again, but I'm on rest days. I'll do it on Wednesday. No, Janet, it's going live on Monday. Oh, so, Mum, you want me to come in on my rest day? Yes, I do. So I was kind of thrown into it, basically. And me and the civilian who dealt with all the kind of civil orders, we came in and we muggled our way through it. It was on the dummy form. The form wasn't even complete. We muddled our way through it. We sent it off to our legal team. They came back and they said, well, you've got to give him the whole of your case file. I said, what do you mean? I haven't even gone to the CPS with it yet. Well, you have to. He has to have everything because it's a civil case and he's going to appear in court and he needs to know what's happening. So there was me. I'd arrested him for stalking. I've got him on bail. I haven't even gone to CPS yet.
Right.
And we were doing this civil order. So we had to then redact things he shouldn't see and go and serve him this order.
Wow.
This is the first one. Nobody knows what's happening. We put in so many conditions that we didn't even know if the court would grant them. We get to court. You've got two lawyers now. I'm now in a little room in court with two lawyers, prosecution and the defence. The defence go, we don't really know what we're doing with this. And the prosecution's going, we don't know what we're doing with this. Well, the defence goes, well, we're going to argue that bit. But you'll probably win anyway, but I'm still going to stand up and argue that bit. And the prosecutor goes, yeah, OK, then you argue that bit and I'll argue that bit. And we go in and there's the magistrates are there and they're looking at it like, what do we do with this? We've got the press there as well. And they go, yeah, OK, yeah, well, we'll give him 5 years on this order. And they went, yeah, thank you very much. Now, that man went on to become a MAPA nominal. So he went on to commit further offences afterwards. And he then said, he bragged to every single officer that had nicked him, I got the first stalking protection order in the country. So he'd brag about it. So I was kind of thrown into that bit. And then the DIs had come to me with jobs that had already been through the system, already been with cops, but the victim had come back with the right to review.
Right.
And
yes.
when the DX, I would then get the jobs. I'd get the jobs, and I'd get convictions at the end of those jobs for some reason. But I would sit there and I'd go, why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that? I mean, there's one case that's still going to court, so I really can't talk about it too much, but there was 15 witnesses in that case that weren't spoken to. And I was sitting there going, if they'd spoken to that person, that person, that person, that person, when they sent it to the CPS, they would have got charges. So I was kind of given these stalking jobs because they were coming back into the force, as repeat victims, as not disgruntled victims, because a victim has a right to review.
Yeah.
And they were given to me, and that's how I got the Belfield job as well. So I think I saw cases differently. This is going to sound daft, but as being dyslexic, you view something differently.
Yeah.
My very first case on public protection was with an arsonist who had set fire to his partner's house. Now, it was just after the Philpott case, really. So it was she got 5 kids as well, it was quite similar.
Yeah.
Thankfully, nobody died or got hurt. And the way I solved that crime was with his lottery tickets. Now, he brought a scratch card. Because he was denying it. He'd been on the Jeremy Kyle show as well, so he'd been bragging about that during the interview. And he brought a scratch card, and it was a winner. And I said to him, right, I'm going to seize that scratch card if you don't mind. I know you're going to lose £5, but that's going to prove you weren't near our house. And he's going, yeah. I brought it in Bradford. I brought it here at this shop. Okay, fine. Now, I went to Bradford. They didn't sell it there. But when I was working for Asda, I had a lot to do with Camelot. So I knew Camelot assigns scratch cards to certain shops.
Yes.
Okay. So I got a statement from Camelot. They said this was brought from this shop. Went to this shop and they went, yeah, he was here. Here's the till receipt. We've done all that. It's here. He brought that ticket from a shop which was 5 minutes from the victim's house and about 10 minutes before the fire started. So our barrister said, we're going to serve this on the defence. Their defence statement will be thrown out. He changed his plea to guilty. He got 7 years, not long, but he got 7 years. The prosecutor came back to me and said, Janet, thank you for thinking outside the box, because we had no forensics to link him. His phone pinged on a different mask at the time of the fire, so that we didn't have that. So it was the lottery ticket, me proving through Camelot that he was only 10 minutes away or 5 minutes away from when the fire started from the victim. So we kind of think out the box. So when I get these jobs, I'd start from scratch. Cop might have done a lot of work, but I put that aside and I start from scratch. I look, where's this investigation going? And it either takes you towards the suspect or away from the suspect. Yeah. And that's how I did it. So I just don't know. I think my mind just works differently and I see different things, if that makes sense. And so I'm waffling.
Talk me through, Alex Belfield was a BBC reporter from Leeds, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, he was a broadcaster more than a reporter, because he's not a reporter and he's not a journalist.
No, he worked in the local media, didn't he?
Yeah, BBC Radio Leeds. He was contracted to work for them, so he was a contractor, like a subcontractor, rather than an employee of the BBC.
Yeah, permanent staff, right?
Yeah.
So how did you get allocated that job, and what were the circumstances?
So it was June or July, I can't remember the precise month, 2019. I'm sat at my desk, the DI pops his head round the door and he says, Janet, I've got a job for you and I'm going to email you. It's come from the chief. And that's how it started. It was an email from the chief constable to the DI, basically saying you need to assign somebody to this case. And I got it.
And what was so why had it gone to the chief?
Because a complaint had come in from the BBC. Now, why it had come in? I don't want to go into too much into what officers did before me.
No, that's fine.
But the victims were failed. Let me just say they were failed. Okay. So the BBC had been trying for a decade to stop Alex Belfield from harassing their staff. So they had 5 victims who worked for the BBC. And they had been trying civilly to stop him, and that was a decade. So from 2000, from when he was sacked to the point I got it, as such. It'd been like 10 years or whatever. And nothing was stopping him. So one of their lawyers looked at it and said, there are criminal offences happening here. Why aren't the police doing something about this? You know, he's crossed the line from civil law to criminal. This is harassment. This is stalking. This is hate crimes. You know, the stuff he was doing was homophobic, transphobic. It was there. It was there. So I think they basically had enough. And the chief actually said to me, he was a bit dubious to begin with, why they'd come to the police. But when he actually sat and looked at what they'd been doing and looked at the statements that the victims had provided, he could see there were criminal offences as well. So that's why it come in. But it had also been in our force before then. And one of the victims only found out that the case had been dropped by the police was when Alex Belfield told him.
No.
So the officer hadn't even gone to him and said, you know, we're not investigating any further. When I spoke to that victim, he said, you know what, DC Percival, you're the first officer I've actually physically spoken to.
Wow.
So there was, and I know everybody's saying that the BBC were all behind. They weren't. Why is that such a big? They weren't involved other than passing a complaint to the police, and quite rightly.
Yeah, absolutely.
They should have done. And why it came to Nottinghamshire Police was because he lived in Air Force area, and the crimes were being committed by him on Air Force area. Yeah. Not even the area I covered. Let me say, I didn't even cover that area. So I worked in the north of the county, and he lived on the south of the county. So technically, it should have gone to a detective on the south of the county. They picked me. They picked me for it. And I read what the statements were in 2 days. I read their statements. I watched the videos he was doing, and I read the screenshots of messages. And I went to my DS and I said, he will come for us. The minute he knows about this, he will come for us, because that's his MO. That's how he works. And I was proven right. He did. So that was the start of my case, basically, with him.
So I mean, you had I know some of the names because I've got a friend who's a mutual friend of theirs. But I mean, they went through all sorts of things at Belfield's hands, didn't they? I mean, the way that he behaved was absolutely appalling.
Yeah.
But what was his MO?
So so we have in our force, or not my force anymore, I'm retired, stalking clinics.
Right.
So he was as a resentful stalker. That was his thing. And it appeared to be, and from what the forensic psychologist said to me, he wants to be vindicated. He wants like revenge. You know, these people got rid of him. And one of the victims took his place on BBC Radio Leeds 7 years after he'd gone. And that was her big mistake.
No.
That she'd taken his place, yeah. So he was sacked, basically. And I think that was the catalyst. And then if anybody criticised him in any shape or form, that gave him kudos then to go after them. You know, you can't criticise me. One of the victims was good friends with Caroline Flack.
Yeah.
And they were at, I think it was, I can't remember, they were at a party, whether it was Christmas or something, I can't remember, but it was at a party, and Belfield put a post up with a noose saying something, you know, really awful about Caroline. And I think what this victim did was, can you take that down? That's so distasteful, you know. And then he started more on him, but he'd actually come to him before that. He'd asked him, can you collaborate with me on some of the reviews you're doing in theatre? And basically he said, no, I'm not going to. So that was another knock for Belfield. So I think it was just that. It all started with him being sacked, and he couldn't get over that. He went for his managers. He went for one of the victims that, you know, that needed to take over from him. The main gentleman, I think he got him a job. He got Belfield a job at Scarlet FM, and that all went pear-shaped. So I think then that victim distanced himself from him, and he can't take rejection. So he can't take criticism. He can't take rejection. I just think he was sacked.
And he's a narcissist. Let's face it.
Absolutely.
He's an absolute narcissist. I mean, one
Yeah.
of the people that he did go after on a very small scale by comparison to the others was Jeremy Vine.
Yeah.
Now, how did that play out, and how did he come to light as a victim?
I was contacted by a person to say that, well, somebody had been ringing me quite a lot, and I was ignoring calls. So you've got to remember, I didn't just have this case at that point. Of course. Had other cases as well. He wants to make out he was my biggest case in the world, but he's not. He wasn't important. And eventually I had an email and then a call, and I picked up, and I was told that Mr. Vine wanted to make contact with me because he was suffering at the hands of Belfield. I was passed Mr. Vine's telephone number, and I contacted him, and he was on holiday in Devon at the time, I remember. And we spoke on the phone, and he told me what was happening with him. I told him this is harassment, this is stalking. I told him that, this is what we can do if you want me to investigate it. I also told him I can't promise you a success at the end, because I never can in any criminal case. It's up to a jury to decide. And that was the start of it. But Mr. Vine was a very small part. These other people had years and years of abuse. Yeah. But Mr. Vine is, I think, because Mr. Vine is the only really big name amongst all these, if that makes sense. He's the bigger name, that he's getting the brunt, that it was him that brought him down. It was this. No, it wasn't. I mean, his home address was released online, and I remember I had to get onto the Met to do a safe and well check on him, and they actually did. They went round and knocked on his door and did a safe and well check and made him aware that his address had been put out publicly, not by him, not by Belfield, but by another YouTuber that was following the Belfield case. So that's what people don't see. That's what people don't see. But
there's no. I mean, Belfield got 5 years, didn't he?
5.5.
5.5 years.
Yeah.
And he's come out and he continues with his nonsense.
Yeah.
His vitriol. He just continues, and to a point where you've actively sued him, haven't you, for defamation, libel?
I sued him during the case. So that happened during the case.
During the case?
Yes, during the case. It was he came out in the March naming me. Okay, so that was the start of it. DC Janet Percival, thick DC, is investigating this. She's already lied. She's already lied to a judge. She's extended my bail illegally. All of this. So that was the March. I was at home, saw that, rang in, spoke to my colleague, another DS. He got a job put out on it. Immediately, my work phone was monitored. So anybody calling me, it would tell me who they were, so I could accept or not.
Yeah.
So that was the March. The first week that came out, PSD, Professional Standards Department, got 400 complaints about me straight off. I had a DS from them ring me up and ask me if I was all right. Now, when do Professional Standards ring up and ask you if you're all right? Never. Okay. So, and that went on. These complaints kept coming in. So eventually, some from him, because we had a DS that came out of Professional Standards into public protection. And we were all introducing ourselves. She was on another team, but she came around the office. And I said, yeah, I'm DC Janet Percival. She went, recognise that name? Where do I know that name from? I said, well, you come from Professional Standards. And, yeah, your file landed on my desk. My DI gave me your file, said, have a look at this. It was from Alex Belfield. I had a look. I replied to Alex Belfield and told him you were doing your job. There was no complaints here. So And I think the professional standards came up with a blanket email saying to his fans, you cannot complain on behalf of somebody. So thank you very much for contacting us, basically. And I had cards come saying, sorry, you're leaving your job. Banners were put up around the Mansfield area saying Mansfield police are corrupt, DC Percival's the most corrupt officer in the world. Anyway, on the Friday, I came into work. I used to check his YouTube. There was a video gone up. DC Percival's corrupt. That hit me, because you can't call an officer corrupt. That's the core, you know, your integrity.
It's everything.
I go into my office. My sergeant's already on his desk. I said, Sarge, beef room, because we had a little room that we had called the beef room where we'd go in there and have our say. He looked a bit shocked, came in, and I just laid into him. I said, the job's not looking after me, nobody's looking after me, he's doing this, rah. You can poke the job up your posterior. So I ranted at him. He told me to go home. I said, I'm not going home. And then I rang the Federation up. I said, I need some help because he's put out online, I'm corrupt. Anyway, we were going into rest days. It was our last day. And I remember the Federation rep came to see me on Monday at home. And I'd come off the ceiling then. So sensible Janet's back now. She's not upset no more. And I had a long chat with him. He told me, are a victim, you have a criminal case. And I said to him, well, if that's the case, I'm going to have to come off the investigation. He said, yeah, you are. And I said, I don't want to do that. I don't want to come off the investigation because I'm going to abandon 10 people, because there were 10 people now in this case. Oh. And I don't want to. And if I do come off it, you could see exactly what the next video would be. Well, there's a new officer now. I told you she was corrupt. I told you she was this.
Yep.
He said, OK, let me go and speak to our lawyers, see about a civil case against him. It's not been heard of before, etc., in this sort of magnitude. I'll go away. He can, and let me sign some forms so he could speak on my behalf. Anyway, came back to me in a few days' time, and he said, yeah, that they're looking at it. We're going to go for him civilly. I had lots of meetings with them. I had to prove time. I felt more like a defendant than anything in that civil case. I'm going, why do I need to do this? Why do I need to do this? Drop it. Just forget it. You were stressing me more out than Belfield himself at this time. Drop it. Just forget it. I didn't hear anything for ages. And then in December, they popped up, yeah, Janet, we've got a barrister. Oh, OK, so you're still going for it then? I told you to drop it. And I spoke to the barrister and she says, what's the main thing? I says, well, I'm not happy he's calling me thick. I'm not happy he's saying, because I'm dyslexic, I should work in a charity shop and all of this. Yeah, that's terrible. But what's the worst thing? I said, corrupt. She said, exactly. And that's what we'll go after him for. Because in a civil case, you're probably aware, they have to prove their allegation. So Belfield had to prove I was corrupt. Okay, so it's down to him to prove, not me. I don't have to prove nothing because I know I'm not corrupt. And luckily, it was at the point where I had one of my vettings again. So in public protection, you were management level vetting. Yeah. So it was higher than CID, it was higher than uniformed officer. And I just got that again. And then our team went, brilliant. That's great. You know, he came at me at one point. There was two that really, really got me. He says, if she drops a civil case against me, I won't complain to PSD about her anymore. I went, complain all you like, mate. I'm not dropping it. Another one was, I'll give her 10 grand and she can donate it to a dyslexia charity. all of this come. Anyway, it was made very difficult by him. And plus he was inside at the time when this was all happening as well. So that made it difficult. It ended up in the High Court. He admitted he lied about me, agreed to pay compensation, agreed to put apologies up. He hasn't complied. He has sorry?
Still owes you money.
Yeah, still owes me money. And it's going up daily by interest. But we've got to figure out a way of how we can now enforce that, because it's getting funding to enforce him to now comply with the High Court order. But in my way, a High Court order doesn't disappear off your credit rating or anything. Like some debts disappear after 5 years, that won't.
No.
So that's going to follow him around everywhere until he settles it.
He'll never forget Percival, will he?
He picked on the wrong person. But to be fair, he behaved like any other defendant would. He's just done it more publicly. Because when you get a suspect backed into a corner where they can't go anywhere, they're going to come for you. They want to discredit you. They want to get rid of you. But he did it online.
You got to keep it classy, though, haven't you?
You have.
Even when and I had somebody come around my house many years ago. A guy that I dealt with, he got locked up, and but there was no social media in real terms then. But even these criminals have got to try and keep it classy. But to do what he's done, I understand that he's still running a YouTube channel, but I don't know.
He is. And the only reason I'm speaking now, I retired. Some have said some of the comments. I just actually laugh at the comments. I use them for content. I name and shame them. I put them out there. I retired before I was sacked. 2 and a bit years after he went inside, I retired. You've only gone abroad because you're corrupt. No, I've gone abroad because I can live better than I can in the UK.
Yeah.
If he'd come out, he can be disgruntled. Any defendant's disgruntled when they've been to prison. That's only human. You can be disgruntled. I ain't got a problem with that. If he cracked on with his YouTube and does what he does, fair enough. Crack on, get on with it. But he came out saying he was a victim. He came out saying he was a political victim and he went away for hurty words. He came out saying he holds secrets on the government and this is why he was sent to prison. The corrupt police. He doesn't name me, but I know it's me. So this is why I spoke. I could have said nothing, and I would have said nothing. But I'm fed up of the lies and the misinformation that is out there about the victims, about the trauma they went through, and they're still going through it. And he's on licence. So my aim is I want the Ministry of Justice to do something. He was convicted.
Something.
I don't know. I think, and this is only my opinion, I've got no evidence of this. I think he told them he earns his living off of social media. So this is why they didn't put it in his licence conditions that you don't rehash your social media presence until your licence is finished.
Have you raised this with anyone?
I don't know where to start.
Oh, I do.
I keep putting bits out there because I think, sex offender comes out of prison. They can go on the internet, but they can't go on certain parts of the internet. They're monitored. They're monitored on social media. They're monitored on Facebook. They're not allowed to have Facebook accounts, stuff like that. Why is it that somebody that's convicted of cyber crimes, cyber stalking, is allowed to go back onto YouTube and act like nothing's happened? Taking the mickey out of the victims, starting on new people. I saw he started on Ian Lee, and it just, he can have fans. Haven't got an issue with people having fans. There are going to be people that like him. That's fair enough. But please do not come at the people that don't like him, that actually were involved in the case, that know what happened. He's not a political prisoner, never was. He jumps on Tommy Robinson, he jumps on Lucy Conley, saying he's with all of them. He's not. He's none of them.
No.
That man, if I met him in a room, he'd be in a corner shaking. He's absolutely petrified. And I'm not bigging myself up to be some big fighter or anything, but he is. He tried to intimidate me by walking past me outside the court, and I just tooted at him, because he doesn't intimidate me. I went into that court with no palpitations, because you've been in the witness box. Sometimes your heart's going like this. I tried to pick up a drink once like this, my hand was shaking. I turned into Magnus Pike when I had to explain to the court and to the jury, it comes in three parts, and the first part says this, and I can see my hand, and I'm going, Janet, put your hand down. But I sat in that witness box with no fear, and I was cross-examined by him, which was hilarious. No fear. So I just want somebody to do something about cyber, not just him, any cyber stalkers, because victims of DV who have been stalked by their ex-partners, the minute they come out, they're back on social media. Yeah. They're back on social media having little digs. And the victim always finds out, you know, because that lovely friend of theirs will go, you know what he's doing now? He's saying this about you on Instagram. He's saying that about you on social media. And I have the victim then ringing me up going, they're doing this about me. And I'm saying, tell your friend not to tell you. But that friend always tells the victim, or the victim goes and looks. Because I was told during the case, don't look at what he's doing. Don't look at what he's doing. But I understood why they looked, because I looked, because you want to know what he's saying, because you want to arm yourself with the next lot of abuse you know you're going to get.
Yes, and I agree. But I did a podcast for Unilad, and 2 million people watched it, and the biggest criticism was that I was overweight and I was wearing a pink tie. I mean, that's pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic. And from that point onwards, I don't look at it. I mean, I've done stuff around the Essex boys. I've been called all sorts of things as a result of that. I don't look at it because all I do is I get anxious, then it affects my home life, and they're not worthy of that. They're not worth it. And I tell everyone, and I work with some very, very high profile people that have been through stalking, don't look. And then, well, it's easy for you to say. Yeah, it's easy for me to say, but don't look, because all you're doing is you're playing into their narcissistic hands.
Yeah.
That's what they want to do.
I shouldn't comment on them. But the reason I'm doing it, I just think they're silly. I don't, you know, this word trolls. They're not trolls. They're not a mythical creature. They're a human being. They're human beings. And when you imagine they're human beings just on a computer, you can laugh at them. You can laugh at their silly comments, because we're not going anywhere. And that's what they want us to do. They want us to go away. Yeah. And I have said to these people, they say to me, you want fame and fortune? No, I don't. You want money? No, I don't. Well, why don't you stop? The minute he stops telling lies, we will stop. Yeah. And everybody involved in this has said the same thing. The minute he apologizes, the minute he gives me my apology, which he hasn't, we will stop. Yeah. So if he comes out and says, yes, I was this, I'm not going to, I've drawn a line under it, not going to discuss it anymore, we're all moving on. This will stop. We will stop having our voice, because remember, the victims didn't have their voice. I couldn't speak. I was told, Janet, don't go rogue. Don't go rogue, Janet. That's what they kept telling me. But after the case, I have cops coming up to me, shaking my hand, saying we couldn't have done what you've done. We couldn't have taken that abuse, what he was giving. But they're words, aren't they? They are words. And I know words cut and I know words hurt. But whether it's my dyslexic brain, I don't know. I could put it in this box. Yeah. And kind of.
But do you know what? I think that he sees himself as being a bit of a messiah. You know, he sees himself as being a bit of a cult-like figure. And it's not what he does, because I don't think he's probably brave enough to do anything. But it's the way that he motivates other people who start to believe in this messiah-like individual. And absolutely. That's what I find quite disturbing. But
absolutely, Justice Sani said he weaponised the internet.
Sorry,
Justice Sani, so the High Court judge, said he weaponised the internet. Yeah, and he did. Yeah, he did that. He did. He offered money for people to get dirt on me. And I remember seeing a comment on Facebook saying, well, we found her on a corrupt police website. We know her address. We know her house number, that crooked Percival. Well, you haven't, because my house was in my married name, Wendell Ken, and my car was in my married name, Wendell Ken. So you haven't found me. But the biggest thing that got to me during that whole thing was I put a chappie away for 19 years at Glen Rowe. Okay, it was a gunpoint rape, and in his police picture, he didn't look best. You know, they're not good, those police pictures.
Right.
Belfield put a tweet up saying, "Look at this poor sod. He didn't stand a chance against the corrupt DC Percival. We demand that his case is reopened and reinvestigated." Now, the victim in that case probably wasn't the kind of person that would be looking at Twitter as it was then anyway. But what if she had seen that? What if she'd seen that picture of the bloke that held a gun to her head while he sexually assaulted her?
Yeah.
And you idiot Belfield saying, "Look at this poor sod, he needs his case reopening." That got to me more in a way than him calling me corrupt.
Yeah, shame on.
Yeah, absolutely. And he thinks it's hilarious. He comes on with the police hat on and all of this and doing the Jimmy Savile impressions. You know, how is that even funny? He harps on that the BBC hid Jimmy Savile, yet here's a man doing impressions of him. And you're right, he does see himself as a messiah, and I call it a cult. I call it a cult because they are literally brainwashed, and it doesn't matter how many times I speak to people, they won't see anything different until that light switch goes on in their head and think that's not quite right.
No.
You know, ex-cops were believing what he was saying. Ex-cops, because a civilian investigator came up to me and she said, "Janet, I have to tell you, I go dog walking with a couple of ex-cops and they were in 30 years. And they said to me, 'Oh, we see what your force is doing to that Alex Belfield. You know, it ain't right, is it?' And she says, 'Well, I don't go dog walking with them anymore, put it that way.' So that's what I couldn't get. And I said, if anybody ever spoke to me about it, I can't understand the stupidity of people, how they can believe this one man from his kitchen in Nottinghamshire saying all of this. And I can tell you, do you want to know why he picked them subjects? COVID, the police, BBC?
Yeah.
Why? Because he knew a certain mindset would follow that.
Yeah, absolutely.
He knew what would bring him in the money.
Yeah.
Because he was getting between 30 to 60 grand a month, if not more, on YouTube when he was monetized.
Wow.
So he knew exactly what would bring that crowd in. And he's still doing it. He's gone back to COVID. He's gone back to BBC. He's gone back to corrupt police. The same. He's gone back to what works.
He'll be me next then, won't it?
Yeah. Adrian Allen interviewed me for YouTube the first time I've ever spoke. The abuse he got as well. The abuse he got because he sends. We call them flying. I don't want to say the word they say, but they just go to do a pile-on. And what you have to do is ignore them because I tell you something. A lot of them are him.
Oh, of course.
A lot of them are him. And his little team. And his team.
I put a thing on when I get a load of abuse. I say thank you so much for commenting on my post. Your comments help promote the work that I'm undertaking.
Absolutely, I do that as well. I say thank you for watching.
Yeah,
thank you for watching, and they all go to me. He told the truth. Okay, come back at me with some truths that he's told.
Yeah,
and I will step down and I will apologise. Not one of them come back at me with any truths. Not one. And then when I said on one, because they kept going at me, they'll go. I said, okay, tomorrow I'm going to ring the police. And on Monday, I'm going to ring probation. And you know what? That person didn't come back at me again. Which says to me, it's him or one of his team. It's one of his team. So yeah, my message is MOJ need to do something about cybercrime. You wouldn't allow somebody that's gone to prison for drink driving and give them car keys back. Somebody convicted of a knife crime comes out of prison, you don't be waiting there and go, here's a little knife for you to take away with you. So why have they allowed this man who weaponised the internet to use that again to have a go at the victims in the case? Hurty words. He keeps saying hurty words. I went to prison for hurty words. I'm a convicted talker. That's what he says. I'm a convicted talker.
But when does hurty words This is the blur, isn't it?
Yeah.
The Public Order Act, the harassment, all these things are legislation. They're there
Yes.
to prevent people from having a free rein on being vile. Yeah,
Yeah.
all right. Have your opinion. You can say your little piece. It's like the protesters. Go and protest. Do what you want to do, but do it within the legislation. Once you step over
Yeah.
the boundary, expect to be arrested.
Absolutely.
And that's what
Absolutely.
they think, that it doesn't apply to them.
Absolutely. I learned so much in the case because I went to the CPS and I said, well, you can't say Foxtrot Oscar to people. You can't say the C-bomb online. And they go, yeah, you can. You can. But what you can't do is I come on and I say, Paul, Foxtrot Oscar, you're the C-bomb. So I've done that Monday. I then can't come back, and I come back Tuesday and go, Paul, Foxtrot Oscar, you're the C-bomb. And I do that again Wednesday, and I do that Thursday, and I do that Friday, and I do that Saturday. That's when you're overstepping the mark into harassment. So they're all going free speech, but there is a price. You can't abuse people online and go, I've called you a C-bomb 25 times now, and I'm allowed to do that.
Yeah.
No, you're not.
If they called it to your face, then guess what? They're going to end up on their backsides, aren't they?
In the old days, possibly, yes. In the old Section 5 of the Public Order, you used to have to give a warning, didn't you?
Yeah,
if you say that again, you're being arrested.
But as a member of the public, which is what we are now,
yes,
we're quite right. You know, Section 3 of the Criminal Law Act allows us to defend ourselves.
Yes.
So you know, they're a bit silly. But anyway, listen,
Yeah.
Janet Percival, I have really enjoyed our conversation. But before you go, is there anything you'd like to add, alter, or clarify in relation to the statement that you've made today?
No, if anybody has any genuine questions for me, then please come to me. I am willing. I'm all over social media at the moment. I am willing to answer genuine questions. With abuse, I won't tolerate it at all.
No, of course, and neither should you.